Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Galant Bodybuilding, Mountain. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about full squats and partial squats. And I always get shit about my partial squat, right? But I've explained this at length of why I squat the way I do, based on my own body dimensions and where I feel the forces are taking place. But really mainly, I do the partial squat or the 90-degree squat at the knee around there, The reason why I do that range of motion is because that's where I feel the most of the leg is integrated into the work, right? And also my ass, of course, too. But I also am able to maintain the proper arch in the back and at the same time facilitate the most amount of tension in all the larger muscle groups of the leg. Now that said, one of the mistakes some people make is that they assume that I'm this partial rep worshiper and that's all I do. But the truth is that I do try to push range of motion in certain cases with lighter weight. And I've showed you guys this with dumbbell presses and barbell press and stuff too. Although I do heavier weights, sometimes touching my chest with the bar and so forth when I'm doing bench press. But I find that sometimes after a certain weight threshold, then certain types of irritation may develop in the joints and stuff. So that's why rather than just discard the heavy weight altogether, I find ways with which to accomplish that heavy weight and then at the same time do rehabilitation type of work with the lighter weight in other ways, right? So one thing I did today was that I squatted 4 or 5 sets of 315, which is very medium weight for me, right? And of course, doing my normal partial rep form, you could say. According to most people, they're saying you're not squatting to depth and stuff, so that's partial rep form. But it is the perfect form for jumping, for exploding. If you're playing football, that's kind of where you would explode from and so forth. So that's kind of the range of motion I found to be the most efficient for heavier weight. But today I also did full range squats after doing my main work sets with the heavier weight. And there's a couple of reasons why the full range squat can be a good thing to include time to time, right? Now, one of the reasons why you might want to incorporate the full range squat with lighter weight, of course, right? I did it with super lightweight, just a plate aside, which is really easy for me. The reason why I did this is in order to establish proper alignment of the knees and the hips, because you are stretching at the extreme range of the motion, right? And so sometimes this can cause a realignment. But if you're experiencing sharp pains anywhere or muscle pulls and stuff, I definitely back off on that. Don't do the super full range. But in this case, it may help align the knees and align how you're pushing and also calibrate the muscles to push in the right way. And of course, get some flexibility because when you're using lighter weights, you could start to work with the yoga-esque side of things with the exercise, right? You can start to push the stretch a little bit more. Now, the other thing is I did this after the partial rep squats because then I'm warmed up too, right? So once I'm doing full stretch, like extreme stretches, I want to make sure that I'm warmed up really well. And then when I went into the full squat, I'm super warm and everything's really flexible because the heat and the blood is in the tissues and in the tendons and so forth, right? Now, the other thing that's a great part about the full squat is that you will find a lot of the forces, or at least I do, start to transfer to certain areas. And for me, it's mainly the medialis muscle, the quadricep, right? The medialis right by the knee, the vastus medialis. And getting stronger in that muscle can also assist with getting rid of knee pain or knee tightness and also bring balance and make sure that the patella tendon is tracking properly. Now, of course, you can overdo this. You can overdo the full squat. And I have in the past where I started to work up to heavier weights. And once I started to work up to heavier weights, I started just to inflame the knees and cause problems, right? So you have to find that happy medium. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes the partial range is superior for certain things, such as using heavier weight and making sure that you're not exploiting the extreme stretch in the tendons in the knees. But when you use the lighter weight, then you can do some rehabilitative work or realignment work. And that can also help you then when you're using the partial range into being stronger and less prone to injury and so forth. So let's address the elephant in the room. That is the butt wink at the bottom of the movement there. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this is improper form if you're using any sort of decent amount of weight. You don't want the butt wink to happen. But for rehabilitation reasons right now, and because my hips just bend a certain way, regardless, like I've got flexible hamstrings and so forth, I've done lots of stretching, whatever. What happens is when I'm trying to come down this low, in order to get down that low, that's what has to happen. And it also has to do with my bodily dimensions and so forth. But really what I want to say to you is that the only way I would ever say that the butt wink would be okay is if you're using super lightweight. But once you start getting into heavier poundages and stuff, it's not recommended. I would never recommend that, which is one of the reasons also why you see my form change drastically when I'm doing heavier weight. It's not about whether I can lift the weight in a deeper squat or not. It's more about maintaining that proper arch of the lower back. I just want to make sure people know that I'm not, an advocate for one or the other in an extreme case. I'm saying, each one is appropriate for a certain situation, right? And for me, I find that I probably could use some extra work on the medialis right now, the vastus medialis in the quadriceps. And at the same time, it's just nice to change things up just to see what happens. And like I always say, you want to break your own rules. So from time to time, I test my rules, right? And I say, okay, does this rule still apply to me here with such range of motion, or is a different rule in place, or should I be changing my strategy based on what my body is telling me? So like I've told you guys, it's important to surrender your ideas sometimes and just to double check if some rule you've put in place for yourself is still applicable, or if it's time to evolve out of that limitation and so forth, right? So yeah, it's good to push your range of motion, but safely with lighter weights. And then from there, when you're using the heavier weights, again, you'll still have the awareness to feel where those tensions are taking place. And if there's too much tension in the joint, obviously you know that maybe you need to back off on that range of motion or the weight or whatever. But yeah, that's what I did today. I did some full range of motion squats. I thought you guys would get a kick out of that. And thanks for watching. So yeah, if you need to get hold of me, just go to naturalgalantbodybuilding.com. And if you want to tune into a podcast on subjects like this and all sorts of other concepts, the link is in the description. The Patreon podcast is on Patreon right now. I just uploaded a new episode, and I'll see you in the next video. Mountain.